Dan Fulgham was born October 3rd, 1927. He's a native Texan. He spent most of his childhood in the Pasadena area around Houston. He enlisted in the Army in 1945, just at the end of World War II. And when the war ended, he went to the University of Houston and studied pre-med, where he ultimately received his Bachelor of Science. He also happened to enroll in the Air National Guard. And in 1950, North Korea invaded South Korea, and the Air National Guard went live. So he went to pilot training school until 1952, when he was, I believe, deployed to Korea. In Korea, he flew the F-84, one of the first fighter jets in Korea, and flew 100 combat missions in Korea until he returned in 1955. He then went to Purdue University, where he earned his Master's of Science in Human Factors Engineering. That brought him up to 1961. I believe that's correct, in 1961. And then it wasn't too much longer after that that the Vietnam War came along. He went to Vietnam, where he flew the F-4 Phantom 133 combat missions before returning in 1967. Shot down once, and I think fetched from the South China Sea, but none the worse for wear. In 1971, he returned to Purdue University, where he received his doctorate in experimental psychology, specializing in experimental design. And that led to a long career in the military and the Air Force, conducting research on everything from aircraft simulators to visual stimulation and auditory stimulation systems. And through that period of time, he developed quite a reputation in the Air Force, ultimately retiring in 1978 in San Antonio. He then had a stint doing consulting work for one of the aerospace companies in San Antonio, and ultimately ended up at Southwest Research Institute. He's retired 2 or 3 times since then, currently doing consulting work. He traveled the Pacific Rim doing consulting work for a number of companies, and is still very active in his wife's company even today. Well, he's a command pilot with 4,500 hours of primary piloting experience. He's a master parachutist. He's a military balloon pilot. One of the nicest introductions I ever received was when somebody said about me, he seems perfectly suited and made for what he's done. And I'd like to pass that compliment on to my father, although with the additional compliment that it applies to so many things he's done. Aviator, scientist, consultant, and businessman. Please join me in welcoming Dr. Dan Fulgham.
Very much. It's a great pleasure to be here. Am I coming through? Can you hear me okay? Yes. Now we're going to talk about airplanes and people in combat situations, and then we'll get through a little Vietnam story. Let's turn and we'll look at the Roswell alien, which I'm sure that a lot of you are going to see right away. One of the things I always have to ask, first of all, is are there any, well, I know there's one. How many retired general officers do we have in the group? Just one here. How many people that worked for NASA at one time or other back during the early days of the space program?
NACA count?
Yes, that was the precursor. That you really went back quite a ways. Well, because now that leaves me a lot of latitude to stretch my stories. Who's in the audience and who isn't? Okay, first thing I want to do is talk about the Vietnam era of 1966 and 67. you know, the war started over there, and the French got out in 1954, and the U.S. got involved again in 1964. And by 1966, when I arrived in Vietnam, it was a pretty hot area. Let me just bring you a little bit up to date as to what's what. Start up here. There's China, all along the top. This is Vietnam in here that runs all the way down. This was the DMZ, or the dividing line between North Vietnam and South Vietnam, which goes all the way on down. And Saigon is somewhere down here. This area here is Laos, all the way up to the Chinese border. And down here is Thailand. We had, we're going to primarily talk about the F-4 Phantom. So we had 2 wings of F-4 Phantoms, and one was over in Da Nang in the south, and the other one was in Thailand, and that's where I was in the ATAC fighter wing. Now, some of the crazy things that went on, our treaty with Thailand said that we could fly the F-4 into North Vietnam, but we could not fly into South Vietnam. So we had to skirt the South Vietnam everywhere we went on the mission. Disregard these lines here right now, because I'll come back to those in a moment. The problem that we were having in the fall of 1966 was we were losing too many airplanes. And most of the airplanes we were losing was this one, the F-105 100G. It was designed originally to be a nuclear bomb carrier fighter. It had an internal bomb bay. It could fly twice the speed of sound, roughly about 1,400 miles an hour. It was to be used to fly into Russia, accelerate to Mach 2, and as they approach the target area, pull up, toss the bomb out of the bottom of the airplane and get the hell out of there. Well, it turns out that it was never used for that because we did not run any kind of nuclear confrontation. It was, I think what really happened, the Air Force wanted to get rid of them, so they sent them to Vietnam to be bombers. And that pretty well did the trick, too, because we lost an awful lot of them. I arrived in late September of 1966. And in November, in the first 2 weeks of November, we lost 8 of these airplanes to this airplane, MiG-21, Mach 2 interceptor, built by the Russians and given to the North Vietnamese. And it was terrifying to the F-105s because they couldn't contend with it. They didn't have the maneuverability and couldn't engage in air combat maneuvering. It just was too big and heavy an airplane. What they would do here, they would get up very high and come down behind the flights of 105s and fire the missiles at them from the back, and traveling at well more than Mach 1. So they could fire the missiles and pull back up to 40 or 50,000 feet before anybody ever saw them. So it was almost indefensible in that respect. If we were confined over there, by the way, the anti-aircraft situation was such that if we flew below 5,000, anybody with a .22 rifle could shoot you. If we flew above 15,000, the ground-based rockets, the SAMs, surface-to-air missiles, would have so much speed that you could not see them in time to avoid them. So we were really constrained to fly between the altitudes of 5 and generally 10,000 feet. And the only way we had of avoiding those missiles was to dodge them. We didn't have any kind of anti-missile capability at all. And when a missile's coming up, the only way you can avoid it is to see it. And as it approaches you, when it's just the right distance from you, you take a very violent maneuver and the missile cannot make that change in direction. And when I was going through training to go to Vietnam, I asked the instructor who was talking about the missiles, how do you know when the missile is just the right distance away for you to take this maneuver? And he looked at me and said, you know. Well, I did manage to dodge a few, but it was quite an experience to get used to. Here's our airplane, the F-4 Phantom. Mach 2, 2 engines, great fighter plane, or an interceptor, Navy airplanes. This is probably typical of the bomb load that we carried when we used them as a bomber. These are 3 750-pound bombs. These are 4 750-pound bombs, and on the other side the same thing as well. So here we had an airplane that could contend with a big 21. And so that's what we decided that we had to do something about. Just as a comparison, this is the airplane I flew in Korea, the F-84. Could carry 2 1,000-pound bombs. And if it wasn't above 85 degrees, you could get off the ground with it. But if it got too hot, you were stuck. That's just for comparison. Okay, now we're going to get into Bolo. This is Colonel Robin Olds, born in 1923, graduated from the U.S. Military Academy at age 20, went to Europe and flew B-38s and B-51s. Shot down 13 airplanes, and I think 11 on the ground. Stayed in the military, married Ella Raines, movie star, and had assignments back in Europe quite a bit. And then he came to Thailand as our commander. That's Chappie James. I'm sure most of you have heard about Chappie James. Was our deputy for operations at the 8th Fighter Wing. Now, Robin liked his martinis. I never saw him drunk in the cockpit or anything like that, but he was a fighter pilot's fighter pilot. And once he went to a cocktail party, he had to be careful because he would just pull chains all over the place. The first time this came up, he went to a cocktail party in the Philippines and sidled up to a general, and this was in late November of '66. He said, General, if you got a problem with those MiG-21s, I have a solution. And Robin told me that General looked at me like, who the hell's this guy? So he flew back to Thailand. A week later, he went down to Saigon to a promotion party, another cocktail party. And again, he sidled up to the general, another general, and said, sir, we lost 2 more of those airplanes, and I have a way to get, I think I probably know how to get rid of them. The general didn't even respond to him. So he flew back to Thailand, to our base, and 2 days later, he gets a call from the general in Saigon and says, okay, Robin, you've been shooting off your mouth about what you can do about these MiG-21s. Tell me what you're going to do. Tell me what your story is. I want you down here day after tomorrow. Robin calls the whole staff together and says, hey guys, we got a problem. Said the general wants to know what we're going to do about the MiG-21s, and I don't have a foggiest idea. So he got some lieutenants and captains, and we had 1 major and 1 lieutenant colonel that just sort of oversaw that group. He said, all right, you guys come up with something, because I got to go back to Saigon in 2 more days. So what they did was put together what we call Operation Bolo. The problem was if the F-4s were up, the MiG-21s wouldn't come up. They'd just stay away, because they knew that we were as good as they were in aerial combat. So what the group came up with, we're going to have to pretend or convince them that we're F-105s. And the way we will do that is we will use their flight parameters, use their call signs, and they flew an electronic device in their airplane that would confuse the radars on the ground. Only the 105s have them. So if we flew up there, even though we pretended to be 105s, they would know that we were not, because we didn't have that electronic countermeasure. So the whole concept then thrived around pretending we were 105s. Now, the 105s came out of here, out of Takali and out of Karat. We were over here in Yubon. These are the refueling tracks that we always used. When we flew into the north, we always refueled en route, and a lot of times coming back as well. So what we had to do was to take off from here and stay very low level and fly over here until we got to the F-105 refueling tracks. And then we could come back up to altitude and pretend that we were 105s. And that seemed to be a pretty good concept. Robin went down 2 days before Christmas of 1966, briefed it to the general. The general says, great, go do it. And do it on January the 1st, 1967. So we came back and really went to work then. We couldn't tell anybody this was a highly classified operation. But what we had to have, we had 40 perfect airplanes, but at the same time we had to keep flying our normal missions. We had to have all of our radars up to absolute perfect condition, because the only way we could fire a missile was if the power control system was working. And a lot of times that was not true. And we had to get those QRC electronic pods from the 105 groups, install them. The spares and sidewinders, we carried 4 radar missiles and 4 heat-seeking missiles on the airplane. That's all we had. We had no guns of any kind. And then we had to train the crews to do what it is we thought needed to be done. So on a mission day, how do you feed 150 pilots and keep it a secret all at one time? So we started going to the mess hall 4 and 5 at a time, starting at midnight until by daylight we had everybody fed and ready to go. Final briefing, we went over all the tactics, and Colonel Oles said, okay, somebody's going to get a MiG. And if you do, there will be no victory rolls. And the victory roll was something that came up in World War II. If you shot down an airplane and you came back home, you could make a high-speed pass down the runway and do aileron rolls, just as a symbol of victory. He said, I don't want to do that, it's too dangerous. So don't anybody do that, or you're going to be in trouble. We had to have an engine start situation where everybody started at the same time, 40 airplanes. We need to get everybody off the runway exactly as quickly as we could. So we did something that was first time it's ever been done, and I don't think it has ever been done since. We taxied all these flights of 4 to each end of the runway, lined them up on the runway. When this flight of 4 went down the runway, took off, as soon as the nose wheel came off, the 4 down here started coming the other direction. And we did that and got all those airplanes off in about 2.5 minutes. So it really worked beautifully to get them airborne. Here's a shot of the way we were at the base. I think this was Colonel Oles' airplane right here, and I was with him in a Jeep, and we went down the line to see how the airplanes were being serviced and everything. we came to his airplane, and there's a young three-striker, young sergeant, up on the wing of his airplane, and he had a cast on his leg that went from his ankle up to his hip. He broke his leg playing softball. And Old stopped. He said, "Son, get out off that wing before you fall off and break the other leg." He said, "You shouldn't be up there." And this young guy couldn't have been over about 19 maybe. He looked at Colonel and he said, "Colonel, this is my airplane. Nobody touches this airplane but me. And so you just get in your Jeep and go about your business." And Colonel Old says, "Yes, sir." And that's just the kind of spirit we had at that time, as a matter of fact. That's somebody familiar on the right. That was to beat the airborne spare on the left. And every single airplane that we put on the runway got off. So there's no problem with needing a spare. There's Colonel Oles. He's getting ready to look at his weapon systems to make sure they're all ready to go. So we took off, went to the tankers and refueled. And quite a few of the tankers that were airborne that day. Here's my flight, Cadillac flight. You can see we have the missiles that we carried over the inboards, the Sparrows. And then here's that radiation pod hanging out of the wing there. All the way into the target. Here are our call signs. They were signed by computer. They said, but guess who got Oldsmobile flight? Colonel Olds. Here I am in Cadillac. We had 2 minutes spread between each airplane. Chappie James was leading the flight on the east side, and we had the west. So I'll show you that now. As we took off and refueled, Olds was leading this group, each flight 2 minutes apart, and he was going to make the turn up here and come down and catch any MiGs coming out of Hanoi. That's Hanoi right there, Haiphong over here. Chappie James was supposed to be 5 minutes behind this turn so that Olds could shoot at anything that he saw coming down that track. And James would be in the area with his group of 4. The commander of the F4 outfit over here, Da Nang, found out about what we were doing on Bolo, and he said, "I want a piece of that action." So they let him take his group and start up here. And his job was to keep any MiGs that we didn't get from flying into China, which they frequently did. As we approached the target, there was a solid undercast, which we didn't expect. Typical winter, January the 2nd, 1967. And the tops of the clouds are about 4,000 feet, and the base is probably about 2,000. Typical winter weather. Olds looked at that and said, press on, let's keep going." Skip Stanfield, leading this group over here, could see the same condition. He said, "There's no sense in going into this, it's too dangerous." So he turned his entire group around and flew back to Da Nang. Olds led us in. As he turned the corner, the MiGs started popping up out of the clouds. And one of the first transmissions that we intercepted from them was the pilot says, "Hey, those are not 105s, they're F4s. Get us down from here." But it was too late. In about less than 15 minutes total, between all of these flights, we shot down 7 MiG-21s. And that was half of all the MiG-21s in North Vietnam. The other 7 took off that afternoon and flew into China, and we didn't see them again for about 6 weeks. So that really worked out quite well. But you see, here's a situation where 2 commanders, 2 leaders, look at exactly the same condition and make a different decision. And it turned Olds into a general and turned Stanfield into a retired colonel. So, 7 MiG-21s, 7 went to China. We had 0 F-4s damaged or lost, absolutely none. And the interesting thing was, when we started back, we were kind of stragglers. And one thing we didn't know was the vice commander had wired in the command center communication system so that it went to all the speakers on the base. And so they listened into our entire operation, unbeknownst to us. They heard every transmission we made. They heard people say, I got one, that one over there. You better duck fast. So they heard the entire thing. And so we got back. There were people standing on top of buildings. There were people lining the runways, the taxiways. And as we landed and started taxiing in, you could just hear the people cheering. And every time an airplane went by and had a missile missing, they were just really, it made tears come to your eyes. And when Olds got in close to the base, down he comes, high speed, doing victory rolls. 6 other guys did the same thing, right off. So these are the guys that did that. Olds got one, each one of these got one MiG each. Olds is now dead. He died 2 years ago of, guess what? Advanced prostate cancer. And it all came out in the newspapers as congestive heart failure. It was not, because I talked to him personally about it. Phil Congress is dead. Raspberry, and I don't know about the others, I haven't seen them in years. This Ted's dead. He went to a 4-star general and died of lung cancer. He was a heavy smoker. And this guy's still wandering around. Okay, 133 missions, that's where I ended my career over there. 100 over the North Vietnam and 33 over, can't say. But we did some flying that we weren't supposed to. Same picture, 100 missions over Korea. Something about standing on ladders, I guess, and they had to take pictures with it. So that's it. Olds here drinking his obligatory shot of champagne when he came back from his kill. We did pretty good with MiGs from then on, and I love that F4. That's it.